This video will cover Grand Wizard Albert Pike's 3 World War predictions, which are quite frankly stunning. But first, I want to give a background on the person who exposed the Illuminati's preparations for World War III and how they plan to use Islam to destroy the West. A secret diary was released by a man with information about elitist organizations and the New World Order. This diary documents that the Illuminati already knows what is going to happen for World War III. It's already mapped out. The agenda's already set. The diary that exposes this agenda belonged to a man named William Carr, who was born in 1895. Carr entered into Canada's Royal Navy at a very young age and ascended to the position of commander. He knew many at the top of their fields in politics and law and in academia. His side hobby was writing books, specifically books on the New World Order. His books documented the breadth in which the Illuminati had taken over all aspects of society, including churches and seminaries. In fact, Carr claimed to have received an SOS letter from a high-ranking official in the Roman Catholic Church in November 1958. The letter outlined a hostile takeover that was underway in the Vatican, the Illuminati having infiltrated the Vatican's quarters. Carr would die less than a year after receiving the SOS message. Carr also documented history behind the most elusive organization in world history, the Illuminati, and their religion, which is Luciferianism. He believed that modern organizations, including the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations, are Luciferian political organizations. He also believed that the chief governing body for Lucifer, for the ascension of the capstone, was the United Nations, and he documented this in his books. Carr wrote several books. His most controversial book was published after his death. It is called Satan, Prince of this World, and is really nothing more than Carr's personal diary and notes he saved for many years. In this book, Carr documents receiving the SOS letter from the high-ranking Vatican official, but he also documents other interesting things. For example, Carr believed that secret societies weren't working independently of one another, but that they were controlled by a top-level organization called the World Revolutionary Movement. And that's literally in his book, Satan, Prince of the World. This organization at the top tier is interested in inciting war, terrorism, and distress to serve its fundamental interests. And that is to establish the New World Order, a Luciferian system of governance and religion. Carr speaks at length about World War III in his book, Satan, Prince of the World. He documents that World War III was planned by a 33rd degree Grand Wizard named Albert Pike. Albert Pike was a notorious Luciferian who openly praised Lucifer in his book, Moral and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Pike was also a general for the Confederacy during the Civil War, and a wizard of occult magic, channeling and summoning of spirits. William Carr documented that Albert Pike wrote a letter to a friend in 1871 outlining the final and largest of the wars. According to Carr, what Albert Pike actually wrote was a lot more than a letter. It was a blueprint that spelled out exactly what would happen in the last war. Carr said, quote, "In the 1860s, Albert Pike is recorded as saying his military program might take 100 years or a little longer to reach the day when those who direct the conspiracy at the top will crown their leader king despot of the entire world and impose a Luciferian totalitarian dictatorship upon what is left of the human race. That's what they're saying. Pike seems to indicate a conspiracy to start a war so that the Antichrist can ascend to his position as world ruler. Pike's letter ironically also detailed the specifics of the first two wars with stunning accuracy, suggesting that he knew before time the details surrounding each of the wars. World War I, according to Pike, would be fought to overthrow the czars in Russia and change Russia into a communist state. The Second World War would be fought for two reasons: to establish the State of Israel and to expand communist control over Europe. The Third World War will be what allows the Novus Ordo Seclorum to rise out of the dust. According to Pike, Islam will be the central factor in the downfall of the West. Islam will be decimated in the process, allowing for the new religion of pure Luciferianism to spread on the earth. All Muslims will fall for this system. There isn't a single Muslim on earth who will not partake in the religion of the New World Order, according to Pike. Islam is merely a tool to destroy the Christian West. That's it. That's all it is. It's a tool. That's what they said hundreds of years ago. The master plan to use Islam was kicked off in 2001 when the fear of Americans was taken advantage of by an esoteric cabal lurking in the shadows. In his inaugural address, George W. Bush proclaimed that an angel would ride the whirlwind and direct the storm. The master plan was unveiled in 2001 for World War III. They started Albert Pike's blueprint when they flew 2 planes into the World Trade Centers and blamed it on Islam. The storm that would come and the angel that would bring it were long-awaited prophetic fulfillments. And as Albert Pike, Grand Wizard of the craft, had predicted, Islam would be the choice religion to use to foment a crisis between it and the West that would only get worse. What is the common factor every time we see a crisis? Who's behind it? Islam. And they want you to believe it's organically an issue of Islam. This was planned hundreds of years ago, and they have quite a plan for Islam. The esoteric cabal is using Islam to achieve the great work. It's all been mapped out. We've seen what they're doing with the migrant crisis. We've seen what they've done in England with the Sharia courts, and on and on and on. They're using Islam to stir the pot. The system has to come down. It has to topple. Islam will be used for the ultimate goal, and that is to fully usher in the Luciferian capstone. They're going to keep using it to destroy Western Christianity, Western culture. It's going to happen, and there's really nothing you can do about it except to pray. That's it. That's what we're called to do. It's been predicted. They've known about this since at least the late 1800s. And even earlier than that, I think. All world wars have been mapped out. The third and the last one was already written in the books. You have no control over this. This is a battle between principalities and powers and dominions. And that is why our brother Paul told us to pray and to go to war against those principalities and powers.
And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one.
Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm?
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror.
This work continues. The story goes on, and an angel still rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm.
A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
He said, so if I may ask you, what are you preparing for? I said, trouble. And he said, but you're preparing your audience by going to your audience every day and saying there's a political solution. I think you're misguided. He said, because you know, you can't, even the best politician, he said, there's massive trouble coming on the horizon just for us, what we've done. He said, but you know what the Islamists believe. He said, you know that they are trying to bring about Armageddon. You know that they believe that chaos and washing the world in blood will bring about Armageddon. He said, you also know that there has never, ever been an alliance between Iran and Russia. And he said, you also know, because I've listened to you for a long time, he said, you also know that that is Gog and Magog. He said, now a lot of people have said in the past that, oh, hey, you know, Jesus is coming. And he said, I'm not suggesting that Jesus is coming anytime soon, but I am suggesting I wouldn't be surprised. He said, things seem to be fulfilling prophecy. And on top of that, he said, you're seeing massive movement of people of faith in a way unlike ever before. You're seeing great persecution coming. He said, so what you're doing is you are all standing against the hurricane. And they said, now think of the hurricane that is coming to Mexico. Why do you not believe in the global warming experts? Why do you think that's so ridiculous? Well, I said, for several reasons, but one, they think that it's man-made and we can change it with money. He said, what makes you different? Because you're talking about another kind of storm that is coming. And you're telling your audience, you know, with the right amount of money, with the right strategy from man, maybe this guy can solve it. He said, you're just as ridiculous as anybody who believes that global warming with trillions of dollars, it will change the weather patterns. The storm is coming. There's nothing you can do to change. The storm is coming. I was pretty depressed by that. But then he smiled. And he said, but you know the storm is coming. We've been praying about the storm coming. It's just our turn now. So if those things are indeed true, he said, you have to start preparing people to weather that storm. Not to change the storm, to weather that storm. That's what I've been feeling. But I haven't, I think, expressed it that openly, and I don't think that I have expressed it I don't think I've said, I don't believe in the political system. I just don't. I do believe that we have to pay attention to what's going on. I do believe we have to support the good people there. I do believe we have to really pay attention to the presidential election. One more presidential election with the wrong guy, and we are done. And we do have a chance of not being done. But I don't think we have a chance of turning the storm around. The storm is coming.
You guys know what this represents?
Tell us, sir.
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm. We have the world's great military people in this room, I will tell you that. And we're going to have a great evening. Thank you all for coming.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Give us a hint of your answers.
Thank you, everybody.
This channel for a while, you will know that Albert Pike's plan for World War III, penned in 1871, is currently unfolding before our eyes. Since October 7th, when Hamas launched a quote-unquote surprise attack on Israel, several notable aspects indicated that this conflict was not just another skirmish between Israel and Hamas, but that there was intent behind what happened, and that intent is to divide the world on the matter and to bring about escalation in the intensity of this war, while also drawing more parties into this war. How do we know this to be true? Israel has one of the most advanced militaries in the world, and they have had conflicts with Hamas for many years. They have everything in place to know about and quickly respond to threats when they approach the border between Israel and Gaza. In conflicts that have occurred since Gaza was handed over to the Palestinians in 2005, Israel's response has always been swift and has prevented Hamas from achieving its goals. Israel's response to the attack that occurred on October 7th warrants some scrutiny, and some questions require answers. Before we continue, I would like to state that I am not choosing sides in this matter. Those who are ultimately responsible for triggering this final conflict want the world to be divided on the matter, and this division is used to draw in support for both sides while escalation continues. So what are some of these issues that require scrutiny? First, less than a month before the attack of October 7th, Hamas posted a video of their preparations for an attack on Israel, showing how they plan to breach the border and enter homes on the other side of the fence. Second, 4 days before the attack, on October 3rd, Hamas test-fired rockets into the sea, and for some reason, we are to believe that Israel did not see this as a threat and potential preparation for a possible attack that may have required more intense monitoring of Hamas's movement within Gaza. Third, according to several Israeli soldiers who were no longer on active duty when the October 7th attack occurred, there is no way in which even a pigeon could approach the border between Gaza and Israel without Israel's military knowing about it.
A year ago, there was a military operation in Gaza to prepare for such events, and ongoingly there are trainings for these kind of scenarios. This raises serious questions, for me anyway, about Israeli intelligence. What happened? 2 years ago, there was a successful deployment of underground barriers with sensors to alert exactly on these kind of terrorist breaches. Israel has one of the most advanced and high-tech armies. How come there was zero response to the border and fence breaching? I cannot understand that. Personally, I served in the IDF 25 years ago in the intelligence forces. There's no way, in my view, that Israel did not know of what's coming. A cat moving alongside the fence is triggering all forces. So this? What happened to the strongest army in the world? How come border crossings were wide open? Something is very wrong here. Something is very strange. This chain of events is very unusual and not typical for the Israeli defense system.
I have also worked with similar technology in my profession, so I can vouch for what they are saying. Fourth, when Hamas breached the border with a bulldozer on the morning of October 7th, Israel's army was nowhere to be seen, and in addition, Israel waited for an additional 7 hours before beginning to respond to the invasion. These are only some of the anomalies that we have to consider having to do with the start of this conflict. And when we do, we realize that there are agents on both sides of this conflict whose actions align with Albert Pike's plan for 3 world wars that was penned in 1871. For those who have not seen this plan yet, consider what it says. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, or the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel and its supporters, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Historically, when a conflict between Israel and Hamas broke out, the world at large would usually condemn Israel for its actions in defending itself with its technology and overpowering force. Now that Israel seems to have allowed Hamas to breach their borders and to commit atrocities unhindered for at least 7 hours, several countries have aligned themselves with Israel, which is something very different to what we have witnessed in the past. But it certainly brings about the division on the matter that Pike's plan refers to. When Israel began its response to the attack, instead of focusing on first taking out the missile batteries within Gaza, they bombed buildings in the upper-class neighborhoods, leaving Hamas with the capability to continue its attacks on Israel. Now, in light of Pike's plan, if Israel removed Hamas's ability to attack, the war would come to a quick end, but allowing Hamas to continue its attacks while both sides suffer civilian casualties, this conflict can be escalated to involve third parties. With Hamas having taken hundreds of hostages, Israel is given a righteous reason for cutting water and electricity supplies and fuel deliveries to Gaza, and closing all border crossings as a means to get Hamas to release the hostages. The flip side of this is, of course, a humanitarian crisis that will ensue affecting all who live in Gaza, and the hidden intent, as explained by Pike, is to rally the Muslim world behind Hamas through the population of Gaza, while the intensity of the conflict continues to escalate through specific actions that will align those who view this behind one of the two sides. So what can we expect to see in the coming days? Once again, what I share with you is my opinion as a watchman, and I could be wrong, but I believe the margin for error has now become very small, and the time for God's judgment of the world is just about to begin. In previous videos, we looked at the 1290-day period mentioned in Daniel 12 verse 11, which expired immediately before the solar eclipse that occurred on October 14th. And from what I understand, we are now in a transition period between God's judgment that began with His church and the commencement of His judgment over the world and the unbelievers. This time that the world is about to enter is described in the Bible as the day of the Lord. The Bible provides us with some interesting clues when it describes the day of the Lord, and the first thing that we take note of is that it follows a blood moon.
The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come.
We have seen how the model provided to us in the book of Daniel pointed to the events that occurred over the past 3 years. With normalcy being removed from our daily lives, with the truth being cast to the ground and lies that permeated the world since March of 2020, and an abomination that was set up causing the temples of God to become empty. We've also seen why this mystery would only be revealed to those who lived during the time of the end, and why those who lived before us would not have understood Gabriel's explanation to Daniel. Jesus referred to this period in Matthew 24 as the beginning of sorrows, or the time of testing of God's church. The world is now about to enter the next phase of God's judgment, which is known as the tribulation, or the day of the Lord. And given that we have seen the expiry of the 1290 days on the day before the solar eclipse occurred on October 14th, just as prophesied by Jesus in Matthew. It stands to reason that the day of the Lord will start shortly after the blood moon that will occur on October 28th. God's word shares more specifics about the day of the Lord in Zephaniah, and it is very important, in my opinion, to note what is said, as it refers to some who will be hidden in this day, and points out events that we are now seeing unfolding before our eyes. It also describes specific actions of people that occur on a very specific date that Zephaniah associates with the day of the Lord. From the other passages with what is said here, we are told that people who will be attending their feast will be wearing strange apparel. It just so happens that a few days following the blood moon that will occur on October 28th, many people in this world will partake in festivities where they will be wearing strange apparel, and where the children will leap on the threshold of homes that they visit for tricks or treats, and where houses will be filled or decorated with evil and deceit. That feast, of course, is Halloween, and the founder of the Satanic Church had this to say about Christian parents who allow their children to participate in this evil. I am glad that Christian parents let their children worship the devil at least one night out of the year. Welcome to Halloween. Now, what is dropped at the time of the solar eclipse and rolls 9 to 10 times until it is stopped by Obama's shoe. The apple then splits. Since the war between Israel and Hamas started on October 7th, there has been a notable delay in Israel's plans for a ground invasion of Gaza. I believe this delay is represented by the apple that rolls over the floor several times before it splits. I have a feeling that the ground invasion, when it commences, will lead to a steep escalation in the war that will draw in third parties. There is also an indication that when the apple splits, it brings about the end of money as we know it. The same sentiment is shared in this scene where the message in the eyes of this brainless character shows markets plunging combined with war coverage as events that are associated with the destruction of a mosque, matching almost exactly what occurred in Gaza over the past few days. You will note that there are 10 black birds and smoke that rise from this attack. This imagery has been shown to us before on the cover of The Economist magazine for the world in 2017, where a tower is struck by lightning and 10 flames ascend from it. We also see references to information presented in Pike's plan shown in this image. Pike speaks about a moment where both atheism and Christianity would be conquered at the same time, and that would seem to be what is depicted in this image. Communism represents atheism and the cross represents Christianity, and this information is not provided in the iPad Code 2 animation. Now, of course, the enemy will not conquer Christianity, but when the restrainer is removed, as described in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the enemy would certainly use this opportunity to claim this as a victory for his side, instead of acknowledging that the restraining force that prevented him from acting up to that point has been removed. This will of course be part of the continued deception that awaits the world and will very likely include the appearance of non-human entities or aliens on the scene. The image on the cover of The Economist magazine associates a very specific date with a moment that is described in Pike's letter, and that would be the date on which Martin Luther pinned his 95 Theses to the doors of the Roman Catholic Church. That date, of course, is October 31st.
Yes, you can.